I am so excited to welcome Susan Cain to Facebook and to Lean In Live. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I think our audience knows her, but she is the author of this amazing book, The Quiet Revolution, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. There's some irony that we are talking about a book about not talking. But it started with an amazing TED Talk that got 15 million views, which is a blow-away TED Talk. And now she's founded an organization called The Quiet Revolution, aiming to unlock the power of introverts to the benefit of us all. Welcome to Lean In. Welcome to Facebook.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be with you.
All right, so let's start. You've said you have a quiet nature. Your quote. How do you lean in, and how can all introverts lean in?
Well, the funny thing is, and you and I have talked about this a little bit before, I think people assume that there's some contradiction between being quiet and leaning in. And in fact, one really has nothing to do with the other. So I've always been pretty ambitious. I've always had pretty big dreams, and it never really occurred to me that there was something that didn't go with being quiet with those two things. So what I really believe is that you have to operate in the world out of a sense of true conviction. And if you're operating from that place, it doesn't really matter if you're soft-spoken or more dominant or somewhere in between. It's really the conviction that's talking.
You've said that introverts have the ability to do everything, but I think sometimes people have the wrong definition of what it is to be an introvert and what it is to be an extrovert. So let's start there. Can you define what is an introvert and what is an extrovert?
Yeah, so it has to do with where do you get your energy. So introverts tend to feel in a more of a sweet spot when they're in a quieter setting. Extroverts tend to feel more energized when they're kind of out and about. And many people have heard that before, but what they don't realize is that it has to do with your nervous system, that we're really wired differently. And so introverts have nervous systems that make us react more to stimulation, and that means we like it when it's quieter. And for extroverts, your nervous systems are reacting less, and that means if there's not enough going on, you start to feel kind of sluggish and like you want more to be happening. And so your sweet spot is just a little bit more, in a more hyped up environment.
Not to stereotype us, but I think if you look at me and Mark Zuckerberg, I'm more of an extrovert and he's more of an introvert, even though he's actually, I think, much friendlier than people thought a couple of years ago, and people are seeing that. And I think you can be friendly and be an introvert, so I want to catch myself right there. But I remember Adam Grant, who I write with, telling me that introverts don't like caffeine because they have enough stimulus. And there's your coffee.
And here's my
right.
coffee
But
right there.
Extroverts do, and I think it's so funny because for so many years, like, I drank all the coffee and Mark didn't.
Oh, that's so
and
funny.
It never occurred to me it was like wiring of our brain that was doing that. So.
Well, there's so many things like that. Like my husband is an extrovert, and for
Does
years,
he drink less or more caffeine than you?
I think I actually drink more of the coffee because for me, coffee is this whole other thing. To me, coffee is like magic.
You're going against my coffee data, but that's okay. That's okay.
But I'll give you comparable data. So for my husband and me, when we're driving in a car, invariably he's always like turning up the dial on the music, and I'm always turning it down to make it lower. And even though I had been researching this stuff for years and years, it didn't occur to us for a long time that, oh, this is us being an introvert and extrovert. And that, sort of minor conflict about how loud the music should be in the car is just one of those things.
That's so interesting because I was, I think, more extroverted than my husband was extroverted, but probably not quite as much as I was. And he always wanted the music louder. So that goes against the right? The other flip of the coffee.
That's
okay.
so true. Well, you know what though? What's coming out of this, and I think it's a really interesting point, is that
the data's not perfect.
Well, and also that I deeply believe that these categories of introvert and extrovert
are false.
No, that they're extremely illuminating, just the way it's illuminating to talk about masculinity and femininity, let's say. But it doesn't tell you everything, and we're all much more complex than that. So I always say to people, like, take the illumination as far as it's helping you, but don't feel pigeonholed by it.
Right. So if you're watching and you're an introvert, you can drink as much coffee as you want. And if you're an extrovert, you can turn down the music. It's fine. All right. So many leaders from Rosa Parks to Gandhi to Eleanor Roosevelt were successful, not in spite of, this comes from your work, but because of their introverted nature.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why did those people, what did they find from that?
Yeah, and it's funny, so our friend Adam Grant has done really groundbreaking research on this, finding that in different circumstances, extroverted leaders deliver better outcomes, and in other circumstances, it's introverts. If you take somebody like a Gandhi, his autobiography is fascinating because from the time he was a kid, when he was a child, he used to run home from school as soon as the bell rang because he didn't want to socialize with his classmates. And even when he was an adult, he never liked to sit in big groups of people. He wasn't really seeking leadership for its own sake. It was more that he was really committed to this thing. And then other people who were committed to the same cause lined up with him. And so you often find really effective leaders who are introverts who didn't get there by the desire to be a leader, but they just had this passion for something. And then in the service of that passion, they end up acquiring expertise and building networks and so on. And that is a really authentic path to leadership.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the other many things you say is that workplaces are really very much designed for extroverts.
Mm-hmm.
Research shows that we
Yeah.
think people who speak up more in groups are smarter,
Mm-hmm.
even though there's
Yeah.
no correlation. And
Yeah,
this
yeah,
I'm very
yeah.
familiar with.
Yeah.
You know, research shows that if you send out resumes with a male name and a female name, we think the male is smarter.
Yeah.
A white name and a black sounding name,
Yeah.
we think the white
Yeah,
person is
unconscious
smart.
bias. Right.
Unconscious bias, and
Right.
sometimes conscious, but unconscious bias. So it seems like your research shows that exists on introversion as well. So how do we make sure that we correct for that unconscious bias, and how do we make sure that all the voices are heard at work?
So one of the things that we talk about at Quiet Revolution all the time when we go in and work with companies on this is that you have to start normalizing this whole discourse. Like, it's got to be where we get to the point where everybody is just openly talking about, yeah, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert, here's how I prefer to spend my time, here's how you do. And once you start opening up that discussion within a team, you can start to work out compromises that work for everyone on the team. So I'm thinking of one young woman.
So bringing it to the surface
Bringing it to the surface.
seems to be the usual answer.
Yeah, bring it to the
Not
surface.
pretending
Number one.
these biases don't exist, but putting them on the table, talking about them.
Yeah, and then once you do that, then you come up with the mechanisms that are going to work for your team. Like, maybe you say, okay, when we're in a meeting, we're going to pause after every 15 minutes for 5 minutes of silence where people can sit and think. And that gives everybody a chance to do the deep think, but it also gives introverts who really love to process before they share their ideas the time to do that so their voices get heard.
Mm-hmm. Studies have showed, and I find this unbelievable, that public speaking is the
Mhm.
number one fear in America. Not
Yeah.
death,
Yeah.
not disease, but public
Yeah.
speaking.
Yeah.
So you've said that you had to get over a fear of public speaking to give that unbelievable TED Talk. How'd you do it? And what advice do you have for people who are
Okay.
watching who
Yeah.
want to get over it themselves?
Thank you. And yes, so if you had told me years ago that I would give a TED Talk, get over my fear of public speaking, I would have said it was completely impossible. The key is, and this is true of any fear, not just public speaking, that you have to expose yourself to it, to the thing that you fear, in very small bites. And so you can't start by giving a TED Talk. You have to just do it little by little. So I, for example, signed up for Toastmasters. And you practice in environments where the stakes are really low and it doesn't matter how much you screw up. And little by little, you miraculously do overcome it. Not completely, and it's okay. It's okay to have some fear. But the issue is, how do you get past the crippling fear so that it's not standing in your way?
In the book Adam Grant and I are writing that, is about to come out in the spring,
Yeah.
one of the ways, some of the research, we share about fear, you can get over it, is when you label the fear. So there's this study
Yeah.
we write about in the book where people are afraid of spiders.
Uh-huh.
And so they kind of randomly assign them into groups. This group is supposed to do nothing before interacting with the spider. This group is supposed to think about other things. And one group is supposed to label their fear of the spider and say,
Yeah.
I'm afraid of spiders.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that third group are the ones that can kind of hang out with the spider afterwards. That by acknowledging their fear and labeling it, they're able to.
That is so interesting, and I'm not surprised by it, because I do think so much of what gets in the way is the feeling of like, oh, I'm not supposed to be feeling this way.
Right.
You're living in a culture where you're supposed to just be kind of effortlessly in control all the time. And in fact, we're humans, and that's not our reality.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've done a lot of public speaking, and I was terrified to get onto that TED stage.
Were you?
Oh, terrified. And then my slides went out, so I had to do it from memory.
Oh my gosh.
But
That's
I was
everybody's
terrified.
worst nightmare.
And it was. I was sitting up there completely panicked. But anyway,
Wow.
I think everyone's scared of that stage. But
Yeah.
knowing it's okay,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
okay. So I'm afraid of spiders. Who wants to hang out with a spider? So one thing you and I started our time together today, and I'm so grateful you visited again, is talking about our kids.
Mm-hmm.
When I asked you what you're doing, the first thing you said is, I'm trying to be a good mom, and I said the same thing. What advice do you have for parents who are raising introverted kids? How do we help those kids thrive?
Yeah. There's so much to say here. But if I had to distill it, I would say to understand that introverted kids tend to have a longer runway that they have to travel down before they take off and fly. And it's okay. And what they need to know from you is that it's okay for them to be on that longer runway. So you're not going to overprotect them, but at the same time, you're going to give them the extra space that they need. So, if you have a kid, let's say, who is afraid of learning how to swim, the answer is not, okay,
throw him in the
you
pool.
don't have to swim, but it's also not throw him in the pool. Exactly. It's more like, okay, maybe we go to the pool late in the day when the pool is pretty quiet, and you're introducing them to it little by little until they get there.
It's interesting. And probably part of what you're doing with your company. Tell us about your company.
Yeah.
How are you helping spread the ideas in your book?
Yeah, so it's a few different things. We have a website, quietrev.com, and that's a kind of community website for people, for parents who are interested in these questions, for workers, for everybody really. We also partner with workplaces and with schools, and we have a Quiet Ambassador program where we train ambassadors within these companies and schools, people who are passionate about these ideas. We train them to take these ideas and these techniques and to spread them throughout their companies. And what we found is that some of these ambassadors are introverts, some are extroverts, but they all are developing themselves as leaders just by doing this.
So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very grateful you made a video, an educational video for the Lean In website, and it is our #1 most watched video of the year, and so we're really grateful for that. I know the many men and women around the world in circles and on our community are grateful for your wisdom. So we're going to ask you the last question, and we'll go to our quick lightning round. Is what advice do you have for other women who want to lean in, no matter what introvert, extrovert, backgrounds, goal? What is your lean in advice?
I would say to know that you're always going to have to step outside your comfort zone. It's just part of the deal. And at the same time, you want to figure out how do you draw on your own strengths. So you're not trying to be somebody else, you're trying to be you, but the best version of you. And also, touching on what we were saying before about fear, there's this saying that I came across recently, and no one knows who said it originally, but it goes, don't let fear become a thief. It will steal so many precious things. And I think you can't let fear stand in your way. So if you become conscious that there is something you want to do, but fear is snatching it from you, just don't listen.
Oh, that's such good advice. Okay, lightning round, short, fast, fun answers. Dr. Seuss, introvert or extrovert?
Introvert.
Introversion and shyness are the same thing or not the same thing?
Not the same thing. Shyness is much more about the fear of social judgment, and introversion is more simply about the preference for these quieter settings.
True or false? The United States is one of the most extroverted nations in the world.
True.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. Harry Potter, E.T., and Charlie Brown were all created by introverts.
True.
Extroverts exercise more.
True.
Wow. Maybe because they're burning off all the coffee.
Historically, at least, online was this place where you could go and open up in deeply anonymous ways. Now, social media has evolved, and so that's actually an interesting question to look into.
That's interesting. I know I've talked to a couple of actors in Hollywood, and a lot of them said they were painfully shy or introverts, whatever language they use as children.
Yeah.
It seemed like, to me, to act, you have to be an extrovert, but that was the opposite. It was a safe way for them to speak without having it be about them. Okay, last question. Is there such thing as 100% extrovert or pure introvert?
Not really any such thing. Yeah. Everybody is kind of a glorious mishmash of both. And Carl Jung was the psychologist who popularized these terms in the 1920s, and he said there's no such thing as a pure introvert or a pure extrovert. He said such a man would be in a lunatic asylum. So
Got
there
it.
you go.
Well, you're certainly not. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much
Thank you for
having
leading
me.
in live.
Thank you.